Hey guys, Dylan from the Geek Duo here, and today I'll be bringing you my RWBY Volume 8 opening breakdown. Now, I'm trying a different editing software for this video, mainly because the one I was using takes way too long to encode everything and doesn't allow me to edit the videos in the way that I want to. So, I found a new one, and hopefully it works. Anyway, this opening, it starts with shots of the streets of Mantle. The first is of an apartment complex, and then it flashes to the same apartment complex, but it's been slightly destroyed, it's overrun by Grimm, and there are fires everywhere. The next shot is of a street with a bridge running over the road. And then it cuts to the same street, partially destroyed, overrun by Grimm, and things are on fire. And then it cuts to RWBY standing in a street that has a clear view of Atlas and its normal Mantle. And then it cuts to the same street with RWBY standing there, but everything's destroyed, it's overrun by Grimm, and things are on fire. We then see the camera zoom in close on RWBY's face. She blinks, and suddenly she's in a pure white world, sort of like the world they were in with Jin before she started showing them the visions of Ozpin. And when she turns around, her entire team, this being Oscar, Weiss, Blake, Yang, Yeon, Nora, and Ren, are all faced away from her, with her in the back. I did say that in order from left to right. And then the music starts. The verse starts with, "We said goodbye to all the things we loved, gave up our lives just to find out that it was not enough." As it's saying these words, we see flashes of the main Team RWBY, and in a part of their outfit, whether it be their cape, their torso, their blade, or their hair, we see a flash to their life before Beacon. We see RWBY in front of her mother's grave, Weiss at the Schnee Manor, Blake from the black trailer when she's sitting on the rock, and Yang at her home standing next to Swy. We also see Ironwood, who has a similar image, though it is of Atlas, and it's in his chest. And as it says, just to find that it was not enough, it flashes to Atlas in ruins. And then, while it's still saying that line, Clover's pin, the 4-leaf clover, falls down from the screen, and it zooms in and shows each of the remaining Aesops on a leaf of the clover, except for Harriet, who has to share the top clover with Crow. Now this is because, we said goodbye to the things that we loved. RWBY had to say goodbye to her home, her mom, her dad. Blake said goodbye to the White Fang and all the faunus that her family and that. She said goodbye to many people at that point. Weiss said goodbye to the Schnee Manor and the only family member she actually cared about, Klein and Winter. And Yang had to say goodbye to her home as well. The next lines of the lyrics are, "We leapt in faith, left our solitude, our carefree peace." As it's saying this, it zooms in onto Crow in Clover's pin, and he's sitting in the jail cell. He's in solitude. He's always been a solitary figure because of his semblance, but he left that solitude when he got close to Clover, and he's now getting closer to Robin because she reaches out a hand and pulls him to his feet. We then see the bars of the jail cell flash across the screen as it transitions to Oscar in a cage. He looks like he's on the grim whale, and he's surrounded by the ghastly figures of Grimm. As it's saying, our carefree peace. He was in peace. He was a farmer. He was happy with his life, but he left it to join this fight against Salem. And we see an awesome image of Salem. She's got, her eyes are like full black and full red pupils. I don't think it's exactly the normal coloring of her eyes. She looks more demonic, and she has these massive fleshy bat wings with black vein-like parts stretching all across it, and she's reaching out to sort of grab at Oscar. The next two lines are, "What we thought would change the world was just a childish dream." As this is saying, we see the beginning of Team RWBY's weapons falling. First it's, hang on, let me just, I think it's, Crescent Rose and Mertonester on the first scene, and then it's Ambasilica and Blake. Well, Gamble Shroud, I was going to say Blake's weapon, on the next screen, and these were what they thought would change the world. The weapons of a huntsman, an extension of themselves, so the weapon and the huntsman were meant to change the world. But they now know that they could never save the world with just those. We also see Team Juniper having their close-ups in this couple lines. We see Jean standing mid-frame with his sword up in front of his face, like we see many warriors who are taking a stand in battle, being the leader. They test their weapon in front of their face before they sheath it. Sort of like a fencer holds their blade in front of their face, like the King of Vale held his sword during that World of Remnant. But behind him, we see Nora and Ren. But they're on as far away as they can be while still being on the screen and facing away from each other, as it's saying a childish dream, which could imply that Nora, whose dream as a child was to be together with Ren, she may be beginning to think this may not happen. Yet Ren's childish dream was to keep Nora in the way it was, their friendship the same way it was, because he couldn't process the way it would stay. So he's, on one hand, you have someone thinking that their dream of a relationship isn't going to work, and the other one realizing maybe a relationship's on the table. This also comes up later on in the opening. The next two lines is entirely related in imagery to the Schneef family. It says, "We failed to stop our own demise, the tragic end before our eyes." Now the first line who's Winter and Weiss on opposite sides of the screen with the Schnee emblem between them. As they're walking, Weiss is looking straight ahead, yet Winter, she's looking to Weiss. And as they pass, we see that Winter's military uniform turns into the hospital garb she was wearing, with the mechanical arm brace and the chest straps and all that to keep her injuries intact. Well, keep her injured limbs intact, I mean. And Weiss, throughout the entire thing, is still looking forward, but after they pass, Winter's looking back to Weiss, almost like she's realizing that that is where she wants to be. She's looking to Weiss like, if I look forward, all I see is James. I can't do that anymore. And then, the next line, a tragic end before our eyes, it shows Willow and Whitley. And again, the Schnee symbol. But Willow and Whitley, they both look sad. Willow's looking down to the bottom right corner, and Whitley's, he's facing away, but he's looking towards his mother as the Schnee symbol falls and shatters. Now, this could be implying a couple things. Either the fall of the Schnee Dust Company and or the fall of the Schnee line. Well, not the line in total, but what was the Schnee family. Because we know that the Schnee Dust Company isn't going to be the same. With everything that Jacques done and him being arrested, it's without a leader. Now, likely the position would go to either Willow, who it's her father's company, and she may be put as temporary chairman until Whitley becomes of age, or it may go to Whitley, who, after seeing that his dad's been arrested for all his shady stuff, may not be as willing to pursue the same course of actions. But it could also be, as I said, the fall of what was the Schnees, which I personally thought, as soon as they introduced Willow in, that she would make a sacrifice play. There were a lot of death flags in that scene with her and Weiss, with the whole, don't forget your brother, you left him here alone with us. She cares about Whitley despite Jacques' grooming, and it's fully on the cards, as I've said before, that she would sacrifice herself to save Whitley. Well, any of her children, but he's the only one that's in Atlas currently. The next 3 lines are, hope has no place here. Maybe the path that leads our way home will finally clear. Now this first line is accompanied with what is possibly my favorite imagery of this opening, and it's of a chessboard between Salem, who is standing in the Black Queen position, and James, who is standing in the White King position. Now Salem, she still has most of her pieces on the board, and they transform into Grimm as she tells them to attack. James, however, his pieces dissolve away. He's left without his knights, his pawns, any of his pieces, because Team Ruby and Juniper and Penny, they've all left. Clover's dead. Crow's gone. The brief lines he had with the Happy Huntresses is gone. After what happened in episode 1, Winter, and possibly at least some of the Aesops. They're gone, or will be leaving shortly. And then we get to maybe the path that leads our way home will finally clear. In this we see Watts standing in what looks to be an Atlesian laboratory, similar to the one that was in Pietro's photo of him and his old science buddies, and he's leaning against a mirrored wall with his tech screen up. We then pass through the mirror, and on the other side we see Pietro standing in approximately the same position, though with the mirror on the other side of him with a tech screen up as well. And then it pans to Penny, who's also standing in front of this mirror, but behind her the mirror cracks. Now, it's also interesting to note that the reflections behind Pietro and Penny, they show a different image to what's happening in the scene. With Pietro, his reflection turns towards Penny in concern, and Penny she just turns around, and I couldn't really read her facial expression, but because the cracks started forming and then it changed scenes, but this sort of leads me to think that, well, the cracking behind Penny is her view on Atlas shattering. Like, she saw Ironwood in high regard, she saw the military in high regard, Winter in high regard, but after what's happened, everything she ever knew has shattered. But it could also be alluding to, and I know I said this for Volume 7, Penny getting hacked. Because we see Watts standing there in the lab with his tech screen up, and this, plus a later image of the trailer, gives me high vibes that something will happen to the technology inside Penny that won't be beneficial for the heroes, let's put it like that. The final line of this verse says, maybe the end we tried to avoid is already here. As it's saying this, we see a pink rose petal flying through the air and landing in Ren's hand. We then see Jean and Oscar appear beside him. It then follows a secondary pink petal, but this one flies past Nora, who reaches out for it, but she doesn't grab it. And then what I was calling Team B, which was Ruby, Penny, Weiss, and Blake, they appear beside Nora. And this is the second imagery I was talking about of maybe in this volume it's too little too late for the Renora ship. After all of the fighting and that has happened between Ren and Nora, it seems as though Ren, after what happened with Neapolitan, he realizes that he does care for Nora too much for him to just ignore anymore. But at the same time, it seems as though Nora she's sick of trying. She can't put it on anymore if Ren isn't available for it, either mentally or emotionally or like that. So now, this could also be leading into the Juniper death theory. I don't think that's going to happen, at least not here, because, well, I have my own point where I think that's going to happen, but I can see them getting injured, because the first time we see those two and they're on different sides of the screen, Nora turns around with a shocked expression. And the second time, Nora is sad that she missed it. Now, this, given that they're based off of Nora is Thor and Ren is Mulan, it is entirely possible for their death theories to come true, because Thor died from poison, and we have Tyrion in Atlas. And Mulan, well, she killed herself. That's not going to happen. But if Tyrion has to come up against Nora and Ren, I can see Nora getting poisoned by Tyrion, being presumed to be a fatal wound, and Ren losing his shit like he did in Kuroyuri. He rushes in and gets gravely injured, potentially fatally injured, from not caring about himself anymore in this battle and just getting revenge for what happened to Nora. In a sense, effectively killing himself in battle, but without actually going down the suicide route, which is way too much for this, even this show. The final shot before the chorus starts is the entire allied student huntsmen facing their respective battles. We first see Ruby and Yang share a look that says, yeah, we're still together, this isn't tearing us apart. And then we see Team A, so the Mantle team, facing a horde of Ground Grim and what look to be Terraxes facing towards Mantle. We then see the B team, barring Penny, facing towards Salem's main armada of the Whale Grim and all of the flying Grim surrounding that. Penny, however, she flies up and is facing the other way from the heroes, directly under Amity, which could lead to the theory that Penny will sacrifice herself to launch Amity into the atmosphere, get the communications up and running, and giving her own life for that to happen, which is another possibility, though I personally don't want them to have brought her back just to kill her off again, though I can understand if they do decide to go down that route. We now get to the chorus, and that look between Yang and Ruby that I mentioned in the last section is actually the start of the chorus. I got its placement wrong. But the chorus starts with, "Some roses will never bloom, some dreams will rot on the vine." As this is being said, we see the student huntsmen attacking the forces of Grimm that are in front of them. But as it starts the second line, they suddenly freeze in place, and Cinder casually walks past them with a smug look on her face. She also walks past Neo and Emerald, Emerald, who initially reaches out towards her with a smile, but as she's walked past, she looks sad and brings her arm back down. Now, I personally like the theory that we know Neo is going to stab Cinder in the back. That's a given. But I like the idea that Emerald realizes that Cinder doesn't care about her. She's only keeping her around while she continues to be useful, and either leaves or assists Neo in getting some vengeance against Cinder. The next two lines are, some lines will end much too soon, some evil will never ever die. Now this starts with the Emerald looking sad, and then Cinder continues walking for a couple more steps before suddenly clutching her grim arm in pain as fire erupts behind her. Now, I don't think Cinder's going to die. She's going to stay until the final volume, where she either gets killed or imprisoned. I'm likely saying killed because she has a maiden powers, though that may be taken off her in some way or another. But as it's saying, some evil will never ever die, we get the obligatory shot of Salem and her lieutenants. Now, we see Hazel first, standing there, looking sad, looking down, like he's regretting being there, like this isn't how he wanted things to be. This could be because of what's happening with Emerald and Mercury, as I'll get to. The next lieutenant we see is Tyrion, who, as usual, is smiling. He's having the time of his life. And then we see the third lieutenant, and it's not Watts. We know that Salem sees him as a necessary sacrifice and probably presumes him dead, either killed by Ironwood or going to be executed by Atlas for his crimes. Because, well, she knew Cinder was alive, but Cinder's part Grim, and Salem can sense the Grim. There's no such attachment to Watts, and Ironwood did take the Seagrim far away from where Watts is, so she may just assume Watts is never going to come back, and instead promoted Mercury to a lieutenant, because he is the third person to appear before Salem. And this could be why Hazel is so upset, because he cares for these kids. He wants them to be safe. Sure, he knows they're all villains, but... well, actually no, he thinks Ozpin's the villain, so he thinks they're, well, the better guys, but he may be realizing that, yeah, this has gotten out of hand. Now there's a kid who is basically one of the highest evil figures in all of Remnant, and he's not happy about that. The next lines are, some wars will not end in peace. Some heroes choose the wrong side. Now, this actually starts with an image that was shared with the end of the last section, which is Salem with a reflection of the lamp of knowledge in her left eye. No, that's her right eye. And the staff of creation reflected in her left eye. We then zoom in on those two relics as they begin circling each other, both producing a mist of a different shade of blue. And then we see Ruby staring up at Atlas with her team behind her, and they begin to fall. Now, the line that really intrigued me and doesn't have any accompanied imagery is some heroes choose the wrong side. Now, this could be in reference to a number of characters. It could be the Happy Hundredses, who are heroes, yet technically they're criminals as well. Like, they do commit theft of military property for the betterment of the people. We've got the Aesops, who are siding with Ironwood. We've got Winter, who's, at least temporarily, siding with Ironwood. We've got Ironwood himself, who is a middle ground. Or it could be in reference to Penny and her proposed solution for how we get Salem to stop her attack on Atlas, which was to give her and the Staff of Creation over to Salem. And it could very well be that she chooses to go against the wishes of the main cast behind their backs and do this in the event that things don't work, and is effectively working with Salem on the wrong side, though trying to be a hero. It could also be that a reference to Emerald, Mercury, Hazel, Neo, any of those four who, in a different world, could have grown up to follow a hero's path, but instead they chose to work with Salem because of the circumstances that befell them. The final lines are, "Sometimes it's worth it all to risk the fall and fight for every life." Now, this starts with Team RWBY. Notice that Team Juniper, well, Orange or Alpine or whatever you want to call them, they're not falling as well. It's Team RWBY, like in Volume 3, but this time they're falling into what looks to be glowing yellow water. And we focus in on Ruby as she's reaching up towards what a bright light. I'm pretty sure you can see the relic in there somewhere, but she can't reach far enough, and instead she's being surrounded by grim extendable arms who are able to reach a lot further than her, showing that Salem is a lot closer to getting the relic of creation than they are. And as it says, to risk the fall and fight for every life. I'm not sure if it's fall or fail, because I've got two lyrics up, and one says fall, one says fail. But yeah, as it's saying this, a few words and accompanied images pop up on the screen. We see the words happy ever after, but as each word appears on the screen, it gets scratched out. Happy turns into a scratched out happy with a question mark, and is followed by a picture of Penny. Ever gets changed into the Ever part of scratch out with an N at the start, and Penny, her image, her light outline on the black screen has turned completely red. And then after changes into again, as all of Team RWBY's weapons, barring Crescent Rose, hit the ground and shatter. And the final image is a panning shot of Crescent Rose stuck in the ice in front of the crescent moon. Now, this Happy Ever After, Happy Never Again is basically the two outcomes of this season. The heroes win, they get the relic away from Salem and that, they get the relic back, they get Amity up into the air and warn the world about Salem coming while saving everyone in Mantle and Atlas. On the other hand, you have what happens if Salem wins. The world will be happy never again, because there won't be anything left of the world to be happy. Now, this is up there as one of the best openings in my opinion. It's up there with Volume 7 and Volume 3. No, Volume 2. I didn't like Volume 3. Volume 2, 7, and 8 are my favorite three. And I know this should have probably gone in my reaction for the episode, but I am getting massive Netflix She-Ra Season 3 vibes when Hordak finally leaves his sanctum and joins Catra on the rampage against Etheria. How quickly they're able to take down the princess cities and force them all back into one location. I'm getting massive similar vibes from the fact that Salem has entered the battlefield, and in just a short amount of time they've wiped out all of the defenses that Atlas had. The Atlesians are cowering behind protective shields that won't last. It's basically a test of endurance, because either they can hold out until the force is repelled, or Salem just has to wait until the shields fail and then wipe out all of Atlas. And yeah, I reckon this season is going to lean more towards the happily never again scenario. Not quite Salem getting everything she wanted, but she's going to at least have something more than she did last season. Whether it's keeping the Relic of Knowledge, whether it's getting another maiden, whether it's killing Ironwood, taking out another of Ozpin's lieutenants, leaving 2 remaining, because Crow's not really Ozpin's lieutenant anymore. He's his own figure on the chessboard. He's like the third chess set that in a 3-way battle, because he's leading the kids who are basically their own army now. But yeah, I really like this, and it does not bode well for really anyone for this following trailer, because there's death flags for Willow, there's death flags for Ironwood, there's death flags for Penny, death flags for Crow, death flags for most of the remaining original Team Juniper, barring Jean, who's going to make it to the final battle and quite possibly be taken out by Cinder, because Joan of Arc died by being burned alive. But yeah, anyway, so there's death flags for pretty much all of the protagonists, because I reckon at least one more of the Aesops is going to die, possibly by Ironwood's hand. I hope it's not Marrow, but he's the most likely to stand against, well, to question Ironwood. And if Ironwood takes out a member of the Aesops, like he did Councilman Sleet, then that means that the Aesops, despite saying they're not friends, they won't stand for that. And it's funny because Ironwood said to Crow in Volume 3, if you were one of my men, I'd have you shot, after Crow fought Winter on the school grounds. And then, what does he do in this season? A councilman, one of the men from his country, because Ironwood effectively runs that country. He has for ages, and now he's martial law, which gives him ultimate power. He shot one of his men. If Marrow speaks out against Ironwood, he'll have actually shot one of his men. And yeah, massive death flags for all except for the main 4 girls, and I don't reckon they're going to get out without an injury or 2. I still reckon Ruby's going to lose at least one of her eyes throughout the course of the remainder of the show, but anyway, this video is going to take me a long time to edit together because of all the cuts and the imagery I want to put in, depending on how long it takes me to cobble together all these and export it into a singular video with this new video editing software. I may just forego adding the reference images here and just link the original opening as a separate video to so you can reference it. Anyway, I'll catch you in the next one.